Guys, we are going to talk about the most brilliant age in the beginning of American history. That is the period of American independence. It is called the Revolutionary Age. Here, the white people of America are getting freedom from the white people of Britain. It is not actually post-colonial. Now, American War of Independence or Revolutionary War took place towards the end of the 18th century. It all started with the Stamp Act of 1765. A new stamp paper was introduced by the British government in America. For all the transactions in America, they had to buy this expensive stamp paper. Americans did not like that. That was in 1765. And in 1773, there was the Boston Tea Party. You will think, wow, what tea party? Let us also hear about it. Array, this was not a tea party. There was heavy tax levied on tea and coffee. And the Americans had to pay a lot of money as tax in order to drink tea and coffee. So what they did is, they threw the caskets of tea into the ocean in protest. So all the tea is in the ocean. That is called Boston Tea Party of 1773. This really made the British government angry. The British government clamped down upon the Protestants, the revolutionaries, and the Revolutionary War broke out. The Revolutionary War is from 1775 to 1783. And in the beginning itself, in 1776, there was the Declaration of Independence made. The Declaration of Independence that gave America independence from the British government. Now, the 13 colonies of America got together. They put their armies together. This is called the Continental Army. It is the Continental Army that fought against the British. The leaders of the Revolutionary Age, they were called the Founding Fathers. The Founding Fathers included, let me read out. I am reading from chapter 2 of the Contemporary Encyclopedia of Literatures of America. And the Founding Fathers are George Washington, you know him. He was the first president of America. John Adams, you know him. He was the second president of America. Thomas Jefferson, you know him. He was a writer. Jefferson was a very important figure who drafted the Constitution of America. James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, James Monroe, and the very famous Benjamin Franklin. We know Benjamin Franklin as a scientist. We have studied about him in school days, haven't we? He was also a politician and a writer. We will talk about them one by one. George Washington was born in 1732. Oh, so early. 18th century middle, 1732. And as the first US president, he made a lot of contribution to American history. He was from a poor background, and his role in early American nation is very, very important. There are no works that he has written that are important. John Adams was a major figure in the Continental Congress, and he was the author of the Massachusetts Constitution. And he was the second president of America and the first vice president. He was the first president to reside in the White House. He was the first president to reside in the White House. You know, White House is the place where the American president till today lives. Thomas Jefferson is an important writer. Thomas Jefferson wrote a summary view of the rights of British America. and Jefferson drafted the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. He was the third president. Then there is James Madison. James Madison was also a very important figure in planning the US Constitution. He collaborated with Alexander Hamilton in writing the Federalist Papers. James Madison and Alexander Hamilton were the major figures in the Federalist Papers. Actually, James Madison was the fourth president of the United States. Alexander Hamilton, as you know, is the major author of the Federalist Papers. He was the first Secretary of the Treasury of the United States. Very important figure. They're all founding fathers. And he championed the concept of a strong central government in America. These are all political issues. They are not that important as writers. Then there is also James Monroe, the fifth president of America. Now guys, very important is Benjamin Franklin. Born in 1706, he was a major scientist, social reformer, and also writer of non-fiction. Benjamin Franklin was called the first American for supporting the cause of colonial unity. He was a self-taught man who at first in his career supported the royalty in Britain. He even supported the Stamp Act initially. Later, he became very wealthy in business and he was well settled, and he retired from business and slowly entered politics, and later he became one of the founding fathers of America. He wrote a lot of works that are replete with full of wit and wisdom and elegance, literary elegance. I'm sure you want to know about his literary works. His most well-known book is called Poor Richard's Almanac. Poor Richard's Almanac is a book which he published under the pseudonym Richard Saunders. And you will be surprised to know this. It's full of proverbs. He originated these proverbs. He made them, such as, lost time is never found again. Fish and visitors stink in 3 days. A penny saved is a penny earned. Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. That is very famous, isn't it? These are all proverbs written by Benjamin Franklin. He also did a lot of pioneering work in electrical phenomena, invented many gadgets. He was also a social reformer. He was influenced by John Locke and many philosophers of this time. It was Benjamin Franklin who invited Thomas Paine, another important writer of the Revolutionary Age, to come from Britain to America. And Thomas Paine became one of the pioneers who inspired the Americans to revolt against the British. Thomas Paine was born in 1737. At first, he was doing low-paid jobs. And in America, he published a pamphlet called Common Sense. That was a game changer, guys. This pamphlet called Common Sense, which came just before the Declaration of Independence, argued that the American colonists should not be only resisting against the taxes, they should be asking for complete freedom from the British. That is what he argued in Common Sense. Another very influential pamphlet by Thomas Paine is The American Crisis. The American Crisis is a series of pamphlets on the Revolutionary Age and expresses American patriotism. Guys, Paine eventually wrote two other very controversial and major works, The Rights of Man, which came in 1791, and The Age of Reason. Let me tell you about these. The Rights of Man was actually a reply written to Edmund Burke. Guys, listen to this. The French Revolution happened in 1789. Edmund Burke wrote against the French Revolution, condemning the revolutionaries, The year after, that is in 1790. 1789 French Revolution, 1790 Edmund Burke's attack on the revolutionaries. It is called Reflections on the Revolution in France. The next year, 1791, Thomas Paine replied to Edmund Burke with Rights of Man. At the same time, this led to a pamphlet war. Mary Wollstonecraft also replied to Edmund Burke with Vindication of the Rights of Men. 1791. In 1792, Mary Wollstonecraft wrote Vindication of the Rights of Woman, that you know already. So, Rights of Man by Thomas Paine is a very important book in two parts. The first part is dedicated to George Washington and supports the French revolutionaries. The second part is a more general discussion on the principles of the government. He talks about the constitutional republic that he advocates in any nation. That is Rights of Man. He is opposed to the idea of hereditary government. Just because you are a king, your children will also be kings. Arey, aisa nahi hota. Thomas Paine says there should be a constitution. Government should be based on the constitution. So this is a political and philosophical work. The Age of Reason that came after this is a theological work. Do you want to know the subtitle? I have given all this in detail in the Encyclopedia of the Literature of the Americas. This is volume 1. The subtitle of Thomas Paine's Age of Reason is Being an Investigation of True and Fabulous Theology. So it's a theological work which became very controversial. Many people thought that he is against the Bible, he is against religion. Did you know, guys, Thomas Paine was even sentenced to death in England. Don't worry, he was not there in England. He went and lived in France, so he was never killed. Ha! He escaped. Did you understand? So the British government wanted to kill him for writing this Age of Reason. Bapre, he nearly died. There is another major poet of the American Revolution. Are suno. Do you remember? We are talking about the revolutionary age in America. This is chapter 2 of the encyclopedia. You should read extra. You should make your own notes, because this year with your study, you are going to be professor. Okay? So, the next important writer is a poet. Philip Freneau. He is called Poet of the American Revolution. Maybe we never heard his name before, isn't it? I also heard his name recently. Philip Freneau. He was a nationalist. There is a major poem by Philip Freneau which is actually prescribed in universities. It is called The Indian Burying Ground. The Indian Burying Ground, where he talks about American Indians who are buried, who have buried their dead bodies. How are they buried? They are sitting, not lying down. He is talking about Red Indians who are buried sitting, not lying down. Arey? He has written a poem on Mr. Paine's Rights of Man. Did you know that? Philip Freneau has written on Mr. Paine's Rights of Man. Another very famous poem is The American Soldier. Also, The Wild Honeysuckle, The British Prison Ship, The House of Night. I am telling you these titles because they are prescribed in universities. Guys, this is the time, the revolutionary period is the time when neoclassicism is spreading in America. There are very neoclassical writers and works at this time, such as Timothy Dwight, who wrote The Conquest of Canaan. Are you taking down? This is an important work. A major writer, Joel Barlow, B-A-R-L-O-W. Joel Barlow, he wrote a series of satirical papers like The Vision of Columbus. The Vision of Columbus and Hasty Pudding is a satiric poem that he wrote, Joel Barlow. There is another writer, Charles Brockton Brown. You are thinking, what is she saying? I have never heard these names before. Array, we are studying the history of American literature thoroughly. No problem if you have never heard this name before. You are hearing this for the first time. At least now you have got it. Slowly, slowly you will know better. You will become a scholar. Okay, no stress. Charles Brockton Brown. In the NET exam, they are asking a lot of unpredictable questions. If you study just the commonly asked authors and works, if you don't study properly, you may not pass NET, guys. Don't take shortcuts. That is why we need to study in detail. I was saying Charles Brockton Brown is an important writer of this early national period. Now, there are two writers you should definitely know. They are very important. Who are they? Washington Irving and James Fenimore Cooper. Have you heard these names? Of course you have. They are very famous. Washington Irving, born in 1783, wrote a series of sketches and stories together published as the Sketchbook of Geoffrey Crayon. You are thinking, who is Geoffrey Crayon? Geoffrey Crayon is the pseudonym that Washington Irving used. The Sketchbook of Geoffrey Crayon. This book has two major short stories. You might have heard of them. Rip Van Winkle and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Rip Van Winkle is about a man who slept for 23 years. Can you sleep for even 23 hours? That is not possible, isn't it? So these are very important short stories of Washington Irving. And then we have James Fenimore Cooper. Did you know, guys, he was the first American novelist to depict African American characters. Before that, many people did not do that. He is famous for the Leather Stocking series of novels. James Fenimore Cooper wrote 5 novels based on a character called Natty Bumppo or Nathaniel Bumppo. He is actually a white man, but he lives among the natives, among the Red Indians. And he is a friend of the Red Indians. Did you understand? And he is called by many names such as Leatherstocking, Hawkeye, etc., Deer Slayer, etc. And Leatherstocking tales are 5 in number. The second of the Leatherstocking tales is very important. That is the story called The Last of the Mohicans. The Last of the Mohicans. All these are historical novels. All the Leatherstocking tales are historical novels. And they depict what is called the frontier. What is the frontier, guys? Listen to me. When you look at the map of America, the white settlements are all in the eastern part. The 13 colonies came like this. Okay? And the western part is forest. The western part is forest. The eastern part is white settlement. There is an imaginary line that separates the white settlements from the forest area. Did you understand? This imaginary line is called frontier. Frontier is the imaginary line that separates the white settlements from the forest area. And as the white settlements grew, as America developed, this frontier receded west. This frontier keeps moving, and now there is no frontier. It is here in the ocean, in the Pacific Ocean. Did you understand? So this side is Atlantic Ocean, this side is Pacific Ocean in America. So guys, this is called frontier hypothesis or frontier thesis made by Frederick Jackson Turner, one historian. I was saying that James Fenimore Cooper wrote about the frontier. What do you mean by frontier? Frontier is that meeting point of the white culture with the native culture. Okay? And his Last of the Mohicans is important. It's a part of Leatherstocking tales. Guys, I want you to answer the questions also in the separate videos. Please read extra study properly, you will in no time be scholars and professors. That is the end of this video on the revolutionary age. I will be back with the third video on early 19th century. That is chapter 3 in our encyclopedia. Okay guys, bye bye. See you soon.